guys. Welcome to week 2 of the SEO Backend program. Last week, I introduced to you guys what backend development is all about, and I went over different concepts and terminologies. I mentioned you will come across a lot in your career as a backend developer. I explained to you what Node.js is and how it helps us write JavaScript code on the backend. We also went over different tools that I mentioned you need to have on your laptop so you can start writing and testing JavaScript code that we are going to write. We also talked about what version control is and how it helps us as backend developers. Lastly, we talked about how the internet works and how it connects to our job as backend developers. I mentioned to you guys last week how having prior knowledge of JavaScript is very fundamental before you dive into Node.js. And for the sake of those of us who don't have that prior knowledge, over the next couple of videos, I'll be talking briefly about different concepts in JavaScript. We have gotten the boring part out of the way last week, and this week we can now start writing code. Before I dive into different terminologies in JavaScript, first let me give you a brief introduction into what JavaScript is. JavaScript is a powerful programming language used primarily on the front end. It brings websites to life by enabling them to respond to user actions, handle animations, interact with data, and so much more. So while HTML provides the structure of a web page and CSS adds the styling, JavaScript is that language we use to add interactivity to our site. Last week, I mentioned to you guys that traditionally JavaScript was built for use on the front end. It helps us add interactivity to any site we are building. Right now, JavaScript is used by over 98% of every website out there. But in 2009, with the introduction of Node.js, it extended JavaScript's abilities beyond the browser. So it allows us as JavaScript developers to use JavaScript code to interact with databases, handle server-side logic, perform tasks usually handled by the most popular backend languages. I mentioned that with the help of Node.js, we can take the same knowledge of JavaScript that we have from the front end and bring it to the backend to do almost everything that every other backend language out there does. Before we start talking about JavaScript is this, JavaScript is that, let me explain to you the most basic principle you need to understand as a JavaScript developer. And this most basic principle is called variable declaration. What is variable declaration? Or better still, what is a variable? A variable is used to store data in the program. In simple terms, it means it is a container for storing information. We use variables to store data we want to use in the later part of our code. When we dive into Node.js, we are going to be writing 2,000, 3,000, 10,000 lines of code. We are going to want to declare variables, store them somewhere so we can always call them later on. So we are not going to be declaring new variables every time we need them, or we are not going to be add coding data every time we need them. So we need to declare variables, store them in the system memory so we can use them at a later time. This is what variable declaration is all about. Now, the traditional way to declare variables in JavaScript was with the var keyword, var keyword. If you installed VS Code with me last week, this is what your start screen should look like. And I'm going to click on open folder so I can create a new folder in my desktop. Let me call it class. Let me call it class. And I'm going to click on select folder so I can open that folder with VS Code. So yeah, this is what the folder looks like now on VS Code. I'm going to create a folder here and call it, I'm going to create a file, sorry, and call it index.js. So you can give it any name, but you have to add the .js extension so that your code knows you are writing JavaScript code. And the most basic principle, I'm going to just run a brief console.log. Let's call it hello world. So let's run this in our terminal. Just click on terminal here, click on new terminal. You should see a new tab open up. And why are you slow? So basically, last week I mentioned to you guys that JavaScript, the web browser, sorry, was a runtime environment for us running JavaScript code. Now we are no longer writing JavaScript code for the web. We are now writing JavaScript code for the backend. We need another runtime environment to run our JavaScript code. And this is what Node.js gives to us. So now that we want to run index.js outside of a web browser, we need to use this runtime environment, this Node.js runtime environment. And how to do that is we come to our terminal and write node index.js. Hello, we see hello world. So all we are basically saying is we want to run this JavaScript code, this JavaScript file called index.js, but we don't want to use a web browser. we want you Node.js to run this code for us. This is what is happening here. Back to variable declaration. I mentioned that the traditional way to declare variables with JavaScript was with the var keyword, and this is what it is. So let me say I have a variable called my name, and I want to assign it to my own name. Say variable my name equals Ifeoluwase. This is the concept of variable declaration. I have declared a variable, called it my name, and I've assigned the value to it. The value is Ifeoluwase. You need to understand the concept of variable declaration and variable initialization. Variable declaration is the process of declaring a variable and storing it in system. So I can always do var. I have my name already. Let me say my age. So all I have done is I have declared this variable called my age. I have not assigned any value to it. The process of assigning the value is called the variable initialization. So let me say I say my age is, let's say 40. So this is variable initialization and this is variable declaration. But when we do it like this on line 3, we are doing variable declaration and variable initialization together. So if I come here and do console.log my name, and I come back to my terminal and do node index.js, oh sorry, I did nodex, node index.js, I can see hello world and Ifeoluwase. Hello world because that's what I'm doing on line 1, and console.log my name on line 5. So that means anytime I want to use this Ifeoluwase, I don't need to start coding every now and then. I can just come here and do call my name. And all I'm doing with this console.log is I'm just saying print this in the terminal for me, print this in the console. With the web browser, there's another console on every web browser you install. But I am using this terminal that comes with VS Code to run my JavaScript code. Last week we installed Git Bash, and in subsequent classes we'll be using Git Bash to run our Node.js code. But for this first class, let's just use this terminal that comes installed with our VS Code. So yeah, it says variables declared with var can be updated or reassigned. This is a problem in the long run because declaring a variable this way won't throw an error. It just completely overrides the previous value without a warning. Yeah, this is what I am talking about. So let's say I have this variable called Ifeoluwase and I want another variable, or I want the same variable but to another name. See by my name as well equals Ebenezer. So if I save this and come here do node index.js, I see hello world and Ebenezer. Now you can look at this. We have just 6 lines of code here, and you can think, oh, this is not a problem. But imagine you have 10,000 lines of code. It's going to be very difficult for you to memorize every variable name that you have. So let's say on line 5, you have declared a variable and assigned the value to it. You are calling it my name. And then on line 9,000, you declare another variable, call it that same name, my name, call that same variable, sorry, my name, and you try to get the value. What you see is that it gives you the value that you last assigned to that variable. But that's a problem because you need the first value, not the last value. So this is why using var is a problem, because it just declares, it just reassigns that value, it updates that value to the last one that you used. So yeah, if I have another one here and I call it let me call this Adeleke. If I do console.log, I'm going to see Adeleke in my terminal. So I can keep going on and on and on and on and updating the value. That's just what it does. It does not throw an error. It does not do any it does not give me any warning. It just updates the value for me. And to solve this problem, let and const were introduced. To solve this problem, let and const were introduced. There are simple ways for us to declare variables that throw an error when we try to declare another variable using the same name. So if I come here and I do I say let my surname equals Adeleke, and I try to use the same variable name another time. Let's say my surname equals let me say Ebenezer again. You can see that VS Code is already throwing an error. It's already saying cannot redeclare block scope variable my surname. If I go ahead and run this code and just say I don't care, just console.log my surname. In my terminal, I am going to see an error again. It says identifier my surname has already been declared. This is what we want to use so that anytime we are writing a lot of plenty lines of code, we can always get it from the code that, oh, you have declared a variable using the same name before. So if I come here and I just do my surname 2, you can see that there is no longer an error, and I can come here do my surname 2, and I come here do node index.js. You can see hello world, Adeleke, Ebenezer, and Adeleke. So that's the first line of code, hello world, and then console.log surname, my surname, sorry, we have Adeleke, console.log my surname 2, we have Ebenezer, and then console.log my name on line 13. That's Adeleke that we assigned on line 5. Uh, um, the difference between these two is that let allows for something called the assignments. We can assign another value to the same variable that we created using let, while const doesn't allow the assignments. This is what I'm talking about. So let's say I don't want to use another variable name. I don't want to use my name too. I want to use the same my name but assign it to another value. This is how to do it. I can come here, remove the my two, and just take off this let keyword. So you can see we no longer get an error. So I'll just remove this line 12, because if I run it this way, it's going to throw an error telling me that my surname 2 is not defined. So I have taken that off, and I can do node index.js, and I get hello world, Ebenezer, and Adeleke. Ebenezer is from line 11, because that is where we are doing console.log my surname. So that's just what it means when I say let, using declaring variables with the let keyword, we can always reassign the value. But if we do const, let's say my surname 3, and I give it value of Adeleke again, if I come here and do the same thing, my surname 3, and assign it to another value, let's say Opeyemi, sorry, let me come here and clear my terminal. If I do node index.js, I get an error. It says assignment to constant variable. That's because I have created a variable called my surname 3 using the constant keyword, and then on line 11, I'm trying to assign another value to that constant that I created using my surname 3. It does not allow that. The only time it works is when we are using let keyword. So subsequently, when we start writing code, we are going to start seeing different ways we are going to be using each of these two keywords. So for now, you are not going to be seeing a lot of VAR, because again, we don't really use it anymore in JavaScript, or a lot of modern code bases don't really use that VAR keyword. And most code bases you look at now use let and const. So just to avoid any error, let me clear my name from here. So let's go back here. Okay, data types. We are done with variable declaration. Data types. What are data types? We have data types are just categories that tell us what kind of data we are working with. In JavaScript, there are different types of data that we can use to store information. Let's go back to VS Code. So if you look at my line 3 here, I have let my surname Adeleke, and there's a reason I have put it in a string. If I come here and do let my age equals 60, I don't put this in a string. If I come here and do console.log my age, I can do node index.js, and I see hello world 60 and Ebenezer. So there's a reason I'm putting quotes here and I'm not putting quotes here. If I take this quote off and run the same line of code, it's going to return an error and says Adeleke is not defined. Now there's a reason we are doing this. There's a reason this throws an error and this does not throw an error. This is the concept of data type that we are going into now. So if I come to data type, it says there are two major types of data in JavaScript. They are the primitive keyword and the object data types. Now, first, let's undo primitive data types. These are the most basic types of data. They cannot be broken down into smaller parts. JavaScript has 6 primitive data types: string, number, big int, boolean, undefined, and symbol. Okay, yeah, this, I think this should be a mistake from JavaScript actually has 7. There's one additional data type called null, but we are going to get into that later on. So we have string, number, big int, boolean, undefined, and symbol. And how do we use each of these? How do we use each of these primitive data types? So if you come here on line 3, we have we have Adeleke using quotes. This is because this is a string. So anytime we are declaring a variable and assigning it to a value that, let's say with letters now, we use a string because we use the quotes because it is a string. If I come here to line 8 and I do type of my surname, let me clear my terminal again and do node index.js. I can see hello world 60 and string because that is the type of that data that I have stored to my name. Just to confirm, this type of keyword is a keyword we use to find out the type we are using. We have type of the value we have assigned to a variable. If I come to line 7 as well and do type of, I get hello world number and then string. So what you need to understand now is if you are working with numbers, you don't add the quotes because it is data type of number. But if you are working with, you are trying to add letters and so on and so forth, you have to add the string because now you are working with, you have to add the code, sorry, because now you are working with strings. That's just the simple explanation. Now, some languages have something called floats. So that when you are working with, let's say we have let pi equals 3 points. So let's say, okay, let me just use 3.1. So if I come here and do console.log type of pi and I come here do node index.js, we still get a number. So in JavaScript, whether you're adding decimal point or not, it is still type of number. That's just one thing you need to understand. It. Whether you're adding the decimal point or not, it's still type of number. I know if you're familiar with other languages, some of them use float for this. But in JavaScript, everything still falls under that number umbrella. But if I come here now, come to line 4 and do let my age equals 60 and put it in the quote, it changes it automatically. It's no longer is data type of number, it now becomes data type of string. So you can see type of pi is still number, but on line 9, type of my age is now string because I have added this quote to it. Big int and so on and so forth. Okay, so let me just stop here for this video. In the next video, I'm going to go into these other ones, the big ints, boolean, undefined, null, and symbol. But for now, go over this concept of the string and numbers, understand how they work, and when I come back in the next video, I'm going to be explaining these other 5 data types, primitive data types to you. So see you in the next video.